where brevity is paramount.
Hello and welcome to the second Christmas special of Chet and Jon's Reassuringly Finite Gaming Playlist. My name is Chet Rovers. With me, as usual, is John Denton.
What's up?
Basically, we're going to do this whole show is about the 10 games that John and I think, or the 20 games in total that John and I think are the most underrated of the year just past 2012. If you're one of those people that hates lists like this, you're not alone. So do I. I'm sure John does as well.
I think the whole thing's a list.
What do you
every
mean?
week.
No, the whole idea of being under a list of underrated games.
Okay.
Because it just, all that does is invites people to sort of make assumptions about what other people are thinking. I read one the other week and it was like the most underrated games of 2012. And it was at number one was Black Ops 2. And he actually said, when are critics going to learn? And that's a game that got universally praised by almost everybody. So that's annoying because it's just a way for you to big up. We're going to do it as well. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the 10 games that we think are the most underrated. They might have slipped you by. They might have been ignored slightly by critics or whatever. But yeah, from 10 to 1, it's not the most time we've played them. The 10s are the games we think are the least underrated. The number ones we think are the most underrated, I guess.
As you can tell, we put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to talk about games that we think you should have played. And if you haven't played them, done. That's it. So, John, go ahead.
My number 10 is Syndicate, which I wouldn't be surprised if it appears somewhere on your list at some point.
Yeah.
Very, very slick, well-made, well-produced shooter with, by all accounts, really good co-op, which I didn't get a chance to play, but I really enjoyed what I played as a single player, which is probably about 2/3 of it. Has since been eclipsed easily by shooters later in the year, single-player shooters, Far Cry 3, etc. But probably available for about 44p now. Yeah. And well worth playing if there's a little bit of a drought at any point, although I don't think there is at the beginning of next year for once. Yeah. But Starbreeze does kind of stylish, noir's an annoying word, but that's the word I'll use for now, first-person games really well, and they do a really good job of doing the kind of physicality of first-person movement really well as well. And Syndicate's no different, and it did get a bit of a kicking in some parts, and I think it was partly, perhaps, we talked about this ages ago, but it was partly perhaps due to the marketing was a bit funny for it. People got on the fact it had dubstep in it, which is just like, okay, that's just some music that they chose. But yeah, it's a really nice shooter. It's got some really cool ideas with the hacking, the sort of stuff that you can do to the world and like blow people's guns up in their hands and stuff. It's not a life changer by any means, but if you found yourself in a bit of a drought and you found it for £5 or something, which I wouldn't be surprised if you could, well worth bashing through.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a bit in a minute, but
sure.
That's a game that the critical reaction really mystified me because it seemed to be being judged on things that a lot of people got really upset that they'd made a first-person shooter out of a strategy game, and that was just like, okay, fair enough, but try and judge it on its own merits. And I was playing it, and I remember I was playing it when all the reviews were hitting. I was like, what? This is not a 5 out of 10 game, blatantly not. But I'll talk about that in a short while.
Okay.
My number 10, I completely forgot it came out this year, but NeverDead.
That was this year, was it?
It was the very beginning of this year, yeah. The Konami hack and slash, everyone assumed it wanted to be a Devil May Cry. It wasn't really. And it's a bad game. I put it in exactly the same category as I put Call of Juarez the Cartel last year, which was a bad game fundamentally, but there were so many good ideas in it that people just wanted to ignore that I kind of felt like I had to champion it a little bit. NeverDead wasn't I say it was a bad game. It was just a monotonous and repetitive game. But the things that were on the sidelines, if you investigated, basically you could tailor the game to how you fancy playing. There were so many different ways of playing it. It was ridiculous. The sub-menu of things that you could unlock. So as I think I spoke about this months ago, I just upgraded this perk so that falling environment and masonry and stuff, the walls falling down, was deadly. Mm-hmm. So I'd circle strafe around all of the enemies, get them into one place, and then start hacking away at the pillars so that the ceiling started falling down. And that was a game in itself. There was all those other things. There was this Sixth Sense thing where you could automatically trigger slow-mo whenever you were in danger and turn it into sort of something a bit more strategic. And that stuff was buried in the menus, and most people just played it as it was straight out of the box, which admittedly it's pretty fucking ropey on that score. But I really appreciated the effort they went to. You could play it in a million different ways, and I liked how askew it was. It was directed by a Japanese guy. It was a UK development team that worked on it, and they were pandering to the American audience non-stop. So it was just a little bit ski-whiff. And lovably shit. I mean, like, there's things that would normally annoy me that I kind of warm to, like the fact that the lead character's name is Bryce, and the only reason that his name is Bryce is so that every time he wields his sword, he shouts "Slice 'em" and "Bryce 'em," which is just a fucking terrible joke. It's not even a joke. It's just like something rhymes with that. So that's what we're calling it. But yeah, it's not a game I'd recommend picking up at full price. You can get it for a £5, and even then, there's too much good shit out at the moment, but I want to give those guys a little bit of kudos for what they managed to do, which was, it was decent, much more decent than people made out.
I tell you what wasn't decent: the multiplayer, which we played, which was horrendous. You
can say that about a lot of games, though.
Yeah,
but that was particularly fucking, that was poor.
Indeed. So, indeed. My number 9 is a game I've talked about recently a few times. I'll go over it quickly. WWE 13. Not so much blasted by critics, is almost completely ignored. I don't remember seeing that many reviews for it by the major sites. The major sites obviously covered it, but no real fanfare. And as I've said before, they put a lot of effort into this attitude mode, which makes up probably like 70% of the content of the game. It really is all about it. And it's the nicest thing that they've done in one of their games for years and years and years, and the engine's the best it's ever been. And like I said, I've talked about it a bit recently on the normal podcast, but well worth getting. It's already down to under 20 quid. I noticed today, a day of recording. So you can't go wrong really if you like all that stuff. Mankind chucked off the cell. Good old days.
But it's not considerably better. If you bought last year's and weren't happy with it, this isn't going to change your mind, is it?
Well, no, not on a purely mechanical point of view, but last year didn't have this whole nostalgia mode in there. It's kind of, the stuff in the NBA 2K games that they've done recently, where it's going back in time and reliving these amazing moments, and all the presentations done really well. It's that basically, but about this really specific, important moment in time. The time when Stone Cold was big at The Rock and Mankind and all these people, and then when it was good and fun, and it's a really lavish production. Lavish for one of those games, as lavish as they can get, with a bunch of poor Japanese people sleeping under their desks in sleeping bags, just wishing they could do something else with their lives. But they can't. They have to make WWE games.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think I'm going to fork out for it, but if I see it around for uber cheap, I might have a look, because I do like those games. It's just they've never blown me away.
You don't have this nostalgia factor that a lot of people will, though.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
People like me who were into it back then.
Yeah, genuine. My number 9 is Beat the Beat Rhythm Paradise on the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, a lot of people did. It's a game that was very, very kindly reviewed by the critics and stuff, but a lot of people just abandoned the Nintendo Wii by that point. So now that
Me
the
being
Wii...
one of them.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a Wii U, though, that's well worth picking up. I mean, it is problematic in a sense because everything about it is quite basic. There's a lot of content, but you will just think that they could have released it as a downloadable game. And hey, maybe they might. They might sort of upscale it and release it as a Wii U download. But it's difficult because I feel reluctant to put a price on how much fun it is, how funny it is, and just it's a joy. I mean, it really is, and completely eccentric in games. The way that games are getting less and less like games like that used to be 10 a penny back in the PS2 era. Now they're not nowhere near as much. And just have a look at it on YouTube, and if it looks like it appeals, snap it up, because it really is something else. And it's a real shame that it came so late in the Wii's life cycle, because most people that I know didn't have Wiis at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to go and buy a bunch of just a few of the classics from the Wii that now I've got the Wii U hooked up to the TV. It's what I've always wanted. I know it doesn't upscale particularly well, but just having it all there on a proper TV. So Skyward Sword I saw today for under 20 quid.
Oh, what? Why didn't you buy it?
Sorry?
You should have bought it then and there.
Well, it'll just go down a bit more, I'd imagine, after Christmas. So it's only going to depreciate.
Your life's... The longer you leave it, the lesser your life is. Play it as soon as possible, that's what I mean.
Yeah, well, I thought there's no point buying an Epic game now when I've got a stack in my cupboard.
I always forget about that.
To get through.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah, I want to get the Rhythm Paradise as well, and a couple of others.
Genuine. Yeah, there's plenty. The Wii, I never gave up on the Wii, and it did deliver constantly.
You didn't. You always championed it.
And yeah, there's loads. I mean, if you're looking, if you've got a Wii U and you're looking for a cheap game, there's fuckloads to choose from on the Wii U. On the Wii, sorry.
Yeah, maybe we should do a top 10 of that one day. That'd be good.
Genuine.
You done on Rhythm Paradise?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can say about it. It's a rhythm action game that's incredibly quirky and amusing. But it's have a look at it on YouTube and you'll know immediately whether it tickles. It's £40. Well, it was £40 at the time, and again, I can understand why some people might have been reluctant at that price. But if you can get it for cheap now, don't hesitate.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about it.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's great.
Sweet. My number 8 is Lone Survivor on PC.
Oh yeah.
The 2D indie survival horror game by a chap called Jasper Byrne, English chap. Like the most Silent Hill game since the old Silent Hills, really. Much more Silent Hill than the recent Silent Hills, in fact. Very creepy, very hard, very unsettling, very stylish. It's all just 2D pixel art, but he uses it really, really effectively. And it's kind of very Lynchian as well. There's a lot of like Lost Highway. I mean, Silent Hill is very Lynchian. That's where most of the influences in that series come from. But there's a lot of Lost Highway, a lot of Blue Velvet in there as well. And it's just fucking nasty, man. The sound is amazing. He did it all himself. He even composed a couple of the tracks for Hotline Miami as well, so he's a good musician. And I mean, it's been in some of those humble bundles. I don't think it's very much on Steam. Highly, highly recommended. Especially if you're into that genre, because until Zombie U this year, which is a way more straightforward type of horror game than this, there hadn't been a truly good survival horror game in ages. Dead Space doesn't really fit into that remit because of its action roots. Not saying it should do, but I was always a fan of that genre, so it was nice to play something by someone who was clearly even more of a fan of it than I am.
Yeah, can you get it on a Mac?
I think you can, yeah. I'm pretty sure you can. I didn't have a Mac when it came out, but yeah, I'm 90% sure it's on Mac. Okay.
Yeah, that always looked like a really interesting game, but I've never sort of persevered with trying to find out how to get hold of it. That's it's yes another thing on my mental checklist of things to look at.
But as I always say about these types of games, they're timeless because of how they're put together. You're not going to feel like if you say put on a first generation Xbox 360 game now, it's going to feel a bit ropey. But it's 2D pixel art, so you can play it at any point in your life.
Okay, all right, good to know. My number 8 is Binary Domain. Which is a game that is it was another one that was just pretty much ignored. There were a lot of critics really, really just championing it left and right, and I'm sure a lot of them are going to end up sort of saying it was one of their favourite games of the year. I didn't think that highly of it. I thought it was a very, very fucking good shooter, and with the exception of Far Cry 3, Spec Ops: The Line, and a game I'm going to talk about in a bit, it was exceptionally well written. And there were points in it when I was like, that scene was so well constructed. I was like, at some point, I thought at some point it may have been a script for a movie. It seemed so. It was just punchy, and it was thoughtful as well. I mean, the bad guys are these droids that look human and think they're human, and rather than sort of have a big moral dilemma, although they did do that, they used it to define the main character. Unfortunately, the main character was a guy called Dan, who I don't even remember what he fucking looked like. He was he might as well have been a fucking droid. Was he a droid? Was that a twist? I don't think it was.
I don't think so.
It should have been, because he was a robotic. I mean, a robot could have created him.
Yeah.
It delivered on the action front big time. It was a very, very good third-person action game, and just it was a little bit eccentric. Again, it was the kind of thing that you wouldn't expect from Sega necessarily. Written by the guy, co-written at least by the guy who created Yakuza, which just sort of goes to explain some of the. It was a quality package that it's a shame there's too much of what it had to offer. If you wanted that game, not obviously not exactly the same game, but that's being offered by Gears of War. There are third-person actioners that you could compare it to.
Yeah.
So it just kind of felt run-of-the-mill, and it had the worst title of all time, and the box art was terrible, and it just looked like something that you'd instantly pass up. But if you see it for cheap, and it's co-op, online co-op as well. Fantastic. I mean, very, very interesting. I like interesting games, especially when they're made with a high budget and they come out at, full whack, because they don't need to do that shit. There's a desire to keep it sort of on the straight and narrow, and it wasn't. It was a very, very interesting game, and very, very well written.
Yeah, so, it was an interesting game, almost pretending to not be interesting in a way that they
that's right.
marketed it in the box art and in the name. I didn't love it as much as some people.
I didn't.
Some people are definitely calling it, in their top few games of the year.
Yeah.
And I've always been a bit of a Gears mark, so when people have been sort of banging on about how good the combat is, I'm like, yeah, it's really good. It's definitely one of the best third-person shooters, but it's not. It's just not at that level, so I can't. Yeah. I was too coloured. I came to it too late after too many opinions, and it was almost impossible to play it fresh because there was too much noise, which is a shame. That happens sometimes. It happens with films, books, music. But I definitely agree with basically everything that you said. And you didn't mention the French robot, who is one of the best characters of the year.
What was his name?
Kane.
Oh, that's right, Kane. Yeah, that way he was a good character. But I just it's more interesting. I mean, it is a very, very good action game. But again, if you haven't played Gears, go and play Gears of War. But I'm doing it a disservice because I do remember at the time being like, wow, this is like as well written as a very, very well produced high end like Hollywood movie. In places, obviously, it's so prolonged that it can't maintain that sort of pitch. But it didn't get the attention it deserved. But that's the fucking no, people don't have time to play everything, and it's unfortunate, but I can understand it. But nevertheless, if you see it for cheap, boy, it's definitely worth a punt.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So my number 7 is Mad Riders. I got it on Xbox Live Arcade. I assume it's probably on PSN as well, but I don't actually know. From the Polish legends that are Techland.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they just decided to do a sequel to Nailed, but instead of doing it at full price, they did it at 800 Microsoft points, which is outrageous. They marketed it as being the same, cheaper than a pizza, and I think there's 45 tracks in it, all unique. Yeah. It's sketchy Techland ATV racing on crazy tracks. It's not the most polished game in the world by any stretch, but it's damn good fun, and it's really daft. A little bit migrainey with their engine, but I don't know. They really, really gave a shit about making this game good and selling it for cheap, and I hope it turned a nice little profit over for them because, I like Techland, man. They play by their own rules, and this was the perfect example of it because so many other people would either never commission it or do something like what happened with Nailed when it was put out at too high a price, and you can't have a game like that's the same price as a MotorStorm or a, even something like a Forza. You can't. So they didn't this time, and very, very cool. I kind of forgotten it even existed until we started putting this list together, and I was like, oh yeah, my boy, Mad Riders, that's good shit. Online multiplayer, has the almost an auto log system within it, like notifications come up as you're playing from your online games. Really good.
Yeah, I think I absolutely loved Nailed. I remember receiving it and thinking, oh god, and then I played it. I was like, this is actually fucking cool. And I think I played Mad Riders briefly. I did the trial, I think. But there was too much else going on. Yeah. I'm sure it's great. I mean, I've got a lot of time for Techland as well. So yeah, that's something that if I see that in a sale for 400, it's getting snapped up, no question.
Yes, it's fun. Even if at that price, even if you only play it for a few hours, it's still worth doing.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, Mad Riders. I think I've still got the demo somewhere on my hard drive actually, because I did intend to go back to it. Okay, my number 7 is Ninja Gaiden 3.
Good shout.
Yeah, not a very well liked game at all. Pretty much across the board, I think. And it's like, what was that game recently that I spoke about? Yeah, it's like Hitman Absolution in that if you're a fan of the series, there's nothing for you. That's going over it a little bit. It discards so much of what people loved about the originals. So it's ridiculously easy. There's a lot. I mean, the combat is so simple that you play most of it by hammering one button. And I know that sounds terrible. This is a comparison I make way too often, and I've got to stop doing it. But it's like renting a shit film from the video shop. Back in, you take a punt on something that looks a little bit rubbish, and it just delivers. It sets out to do something, and it does it. And it's a simple. The fact that you could play it on a NES pad kind of sort of puts you where, I mean, it kind of draws allegiance to the originals because it is so simple, but I found it enjoyable. I played it right through to the end. I didn't think there was any lulls in it. It's mindless, and it's like, in a sense, it is like the old games because there's no collectibles, there's no branching pathways, there's nothing. There's just go here, kill a load of people, go there. That's all it is. So the fact that there wasn't that punishing difficulty tier, I can understand why sort of hardcore fans felt really incensed by it. But again, I put it in the same category as NeverDead or Binary Domain even. It's an action game that's probably not going to set your world alight. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It makes some stupid mistakes. There's, what's his name? I can't believe I've forgotten his name. Hayabusa, right? Yeah. Hayabusa. He's just sort of, normally he's like this silent ninja badass guy, and in this guy they introduce him. They have a relationship. He has a relationship with this little moppet child, and you're like, "What are you doing?" It's completely mystifying. It's like you're watching. A lot of Van Damme movies did it in the 80s and 90s, or Steven Seagal, and you're just like, I don't want to see you bond with a kid. Do a roundhouse kick, do the splits, and then bite someone's dick off. I don't want to see you bonding with this little child. Thank you very much. So it makes mistakes. It's daft. It's forgettable. I wouldn't even say I can remember a whole lot about it, but I really did enjoy it. I have to be honest.
I don't remember the Seagal movie where he did that.
I was actually thinking more Jean-Claude Van Damme. He's the Splits, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the Splits.
I don't think Steven Seagal ever did the Splits ever.
It has to happen. It needs to happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, let's start a Kickstarter.
The Split Starter. I'm in.
Cool.
Yeah. That's just put me in a good mood. My number 6 is it probably shouldn't be on here, but so many people might have missed it. So it's 30 Flights of Loving, which is critically lauded. So I can't call it underrated, but it fits into you might have missed it remit, I guess. The very cool, stylish first-person story, I'd call it. I mean, I like to call everything a game that is a video game, so I don't like to get into that whole definition argument. But it doesn't really have any mechanics as much. It's just a first-person story, but it's all done through jump cuts. So it's all about what happens, the relationship between the three characters in the game outside of the action scenes, sort of around the action scenes. It only lasts about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's just a really, really interesting piece of work and kind of an example of what can be achieved in this medium if you don't just go down the standard tracks. I don't think it's perfect, but it has very cool music. It's like a heist. It's all about this heist, but instead of seeing the heist, you kind of see the aftermath of the heist or what happened with the characters, the lead up to the fuck up in the heist. It's very, very cool. It was a little bit too expensive. I think it's like £6 or something when it should be maybe £2, but it's the kind of thing that I've got it on my laptop and I just kind of want to shove it in front of someone if they've got 10 minutes to spare and just go, check that out. What do you think of that? Look what games can be sometimes. And that's exactly what that game is to me.
God, the more I hear about that game, the more I'm just like that. Not only does it sound so far up my street, it's stupid, but I have to see what the hell's it all about. Because as many times as I've had it explained to me, I still have no idea what I'm going to get.
Well, like I say, it's on my laptop. So when I see it next, it is 10 minutes long. So I can just go and make a cup of tea or something. You can play it, and then
I'm going to do that. Despite the fact that I've said previously that I should watch it on YouTube, but maybe I'll wait for that.
I think it's definitely better to play because you can do it at your own pace, and it throws in some surprises in there as well. It is hard to explain. It's definitely, you just need to play it.
Yeah, I will.
It all makes sense when you play it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm definitely going to do that. I wish I should. We should do this podcast. I mean, I don't know. Do you have a pad and paper ready? Don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, I should do that too. I don't. Okay, my number 6 is Star Wars Connect or Connect Star Wars. That might
appear on your list.
I have to be honest. Again, I played it. I did it in one sitting. and I just really enjoyed it. A lot of love went into that game, and so many people were. I couldn't believe the number of people. Some people whom I really respect professionally, saying that they couldn't believe that there was a game out there that had turned Star Wars into a thing for kids. And I was like, are you absolutely being serious? I mean, are you absolutely serious? This weird relationship that people have with Star Wars, I don't get it. I loved it when I was a kid. I'm not a kid anymore. Get the fuck over it. Don't understand it. But the game was an incredibly polished production. And I know people have said that they've had issues with Kinect. And I can't argue with that. But at the same time, as I said when I spoke about it months ago, I have the least appropriate setup for Kinect. I live in a shoebox and it's dark, and yet it worked like a dream. It really did work, and you know it was a Kinect game that worked. It aped which before Star Wars Kinect was the best Kinect game, which is Kinect Adventures, aside from Child of Eden, which is a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
But it used some of the moves, and the Kinect Adventures did make me excited briefly for Kinect because it did work, but it involved very, very broad gestures, and Star Wars Kinect sort of was an extension of the same thing, and I just thought it was really, really enjoyable. I thought it was entertaining. Like I said, I did it in one sitting, or standing, I should say. And at the end of the day, the whole thing consisted of me, a grown man, standing in his flat, windmilling for 5 hours. That's basically all it was, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really, really good product, and to see it just shat on as merciless as it was. I mean, if it didn't work for you, that's one thing, but people who just wanted to fucking kill it stone dead because they thought it bastardised Star Wars, it's a real shame. But yeah, I did enjoy it a fuck of a lot. I really did.
Yeah, you almost sold it to me, to be honest, when you talked about it so excitedly on that episode ages ago. I haven't had a chance to play it, and it's like you, very much, probably more so, the whole Star Wars thing does mystify me.
Yeah.
You know, I can see why my kids love it, and I liked it when I was young as well. Yeah. But you know, you like what you like, but you don't need to hold it in such high esteem all the time. It's not sacred. It's just some films about a bunch of people.
Yeah. But yeah, I had to draw. I mean, like when I tried to describe it, when I had that reasonably intense and complicated fight, and then I just turned and kicked someone, and he went flying off the side of one of those land speeders in the desert. I was like, "This is wicked! How could you not love this? This is actually, it actually works." But then again, if you had a problem with the tech, that's fine. I didn't. I still think it was a very, very well made game and done with a lot of love as well.
Yeah. I think you're the only one, but
I know it completely mystifies me.
I'm sure there's plenty of kids who loved it.
That's what. When I reviewed it, I said, whatever you think, the developers have done what they set out to do. Kids are going to fucking love it, and I hope they did. I really do.
If they were tall enough to play it, that is a problem with Kinect.
True.
But not a problem with you, you fucking lanky fuck. My number 5 is Sniper Elite V2.
Oh yeah.
It is exactly what it is. You know, if you played Sniper Elite V1, a game about being a sniper, very much having to adjust for your height and all that sort of business. And this is a game that exists almost entirely just to show you really gruesome, horrendous shots of German Nazis' heads exploding. It's like some sort of catharsis for World War II sufferer or something like that. It's gruesome in a way that very few games have ever been that gruesome. It absolutely revels in it. But you know, when it works and when you're picking people off and toying with the AI and staying hidden, it's very cool. There are too many sections where you're indoors and you have to be stealthy and they're a bit shit. But yeah, I liked it. I did enjoy it. Like I say, when it works, it plays like nothing else. And it's very, very, very satisfying to line up a really long sniper shot and then it's switched to the bullet cam and you pop someone's eyeball or testicles. Don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I can't lie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as much as you did. It's not on my list, but it was, very, very good. I mean, everyone loves nailing sniper shots in any game ever. So they condensed it. I mean, it was annoying when you were asked to play a different game altogether, which wasn't what this was about, and that was kind of frustrating. But I thought, very, very entertaining. That I think it sold very well.
it's your classic example of a niche game. I've said this before, but quite often people use that term to mean something that's small and won't sell, but it means the opposite. Really, it's something that will sell like hotcakes to a small but very dedicated audience, and that's exactly what that is. And I think they knew from the success of the first one and the fact that people like sniping.
Yeah,
Not everyone, but enough people to make a game that's not going to cost as much as a proper classic AAA game, and yeah. It did well. It came out at the right time. I think that's what's kept Rebellion going. It certainly wasn't NeverDead.
Yeah, true. I forgot they developed that. I completely forgot. Okay, yeah, no, that was a good game. Solid all the way.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 5 is Pandora's Tower on the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it's a game that was left in the dust because a lot of people abandoned the Wii. And it was kind of lumped in because there were 3 Japanese Nintendo Wii exclusive games all set to release in the same sort of 6 to 8 month period. Pandora's Tower was lumped in with Xenoblade Chronicles and Last Story, and they're hardcore RPGs. And this is not that. It's a much more accessible game. It's there's bits of Resident Evil 4 in it. There's bits of, predominantly there are elements of Zelda. There are elements of Castlevania and there are elements of Metroid, which leads some people to mesh those 2 words together and think it's acceptable, and it's not. But it was just it had a profound effect on me. I mean, it had something to do with the Wii, and I think I said this when earlier in the year. The fact that the Wii is a totally offline console, and you enter that world when you turn the game on, and you exit it only when you turn the game off. You haven't got friends lists and all that stuff. Because it's a game all about you being in this very, very weird, isolated, melancholy, strange world, and I got completely sucked into it. It was much more like one of those weird PS2 games that kind of sort of used to succeed by word of mouth. That's a bygone era now, pretty much. But just the atmosphere was so powerful, and the economy of the storytelling was beautiful. It was just this simple story about this girl was ill and you had to cure her, and you had all these things that you had to do. And it was a bit of Metroid, a bit of Castlevania, a bit of Resident Evil 4, but it felt the way they spliced those elements together was kind of fresh. And the atmosphere is not something I feel confident saying. Most people don't buy games because they're great. They have great atmosphere to them, but it definitely had an effect on me. And just the game was. I absolutely loved it. There was no needless grinding, no needless exploration. It was just nuts and bolts, well fucking designed. I love that game, but again, I think a lot of people won't have been able to even know about it or try it because it came at the tail end of the Nintendo Wii's life. But if you've got a Wii U, that's another one that you should take a look at.
Yeah, you made it sound very interesting both times that you talked about it, and I'll be honest, there's not going to be time, I don't think, for me to play it, but it does sound cool.
It is.
Maybe I'll check a couple of Let's Play videos online and see what it's all about, because I like it when you talk about the fact it's an offline console. I do miss those days in some ways of just being transported into a game like people are with a book, and you're not being distracted by achievement pop-ups or people coming online. I love all that stuff in some cases, a lot of cases in fact, but sometimes you just want to be sucked into a world, and at least on 360 you can turn them off if you're playing, say, a game like Dishonored or Bioshock perhaps, where you want to be, I was going to say enraptured, but immersed, so you can turn off those distractions. But you're totally right about that being a kind of hark back to the PS2 era when the graphical fidelity was high enough so you could be pulled in like that to a world, but you weren't constantly being badgered by little pop-ups.
Yeah, and it is weird. It's not something because you can turn those notifications off on Xbox or PS3 or Wii U, but maybe it's just very specific to me. I mean, you have your mobile phone sat next to you. You can get text messages and stuff, but I still felt completely in that world. And maybe it was because it does somehow hark back to a previous era of gaming. But that's not to detract from what it does. It's a very, very fucking good action RPG. And have a look. Look at videos on YouTube, and I think very, very much of it. Very much.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch some vids because it does sound interesting.
It is, yeah.
On a completely different tack, I'd say my number 4. We're on 4, right?
That was my 5, so yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, my number 4 is Pixel Junk 4 AM on PS3.
Oh fuck! I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, as did everyone. I mean, the game got a bit of a kicking in when it came out, but I, based on you playing it actually and talking about it on this very show, it picked it up straight away and absolutely loved it. It's hard to describe. It's a PlayStation Move game, and it's basically almost like a free-form music sequencer.
Yeah.
But you kind of pull loops into an environment from the 4 different corners of the screen using the Move, and you start to like DJ in a way that someone would in a really weird, like a really crap music video from the 80s or something. But it works, man. It works. There's one tune it starts with, and it's all like progressive house. So you're only adding ever so slight layers to the music. Like you might just switch and drop a slightly different kick drum in there, or pull in a different hi-hat, and you can use the Move to twist and change the fucking wave of the note, I guess, for one, or the volume, and distort it slightly. And then I just found myself the couple of drinks just completely getting into it. I do get sucked in by music anyway, but I was absolutely loving it. And then it's the cool mode where people can actually watch your performance, and if they like what you're doing, they'll shake their moves when they're watching it, and you get little fans come at the bottom of the screen, and like your number goes up for how much people are liking it. And it was weird. I had like quite a lot of people in my room watching me DJ over this weird, completely unique PlayStation format. And I'd wait for the right time, and I'd bring in like and all the people would go nuts, and I felt like the man.
I'm going to put that on tonight. I can't believe I forgot about it, because it would definitely be on this list if I hadn't. But that's just it was a downloadable game and it was cheap, but that is why I own a PlayStation 3.
Yes,
because that would not exist on any other console. It's such a Sony game, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and not technically a game as well. That's something that I've always meant. I never found the time or the opportunity, but there are some people I know who don't play games, and I know they would go mad for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's an experience. It's not, you don't have a goal. You just build. Oh man, it's so good, and I think it's on sale at the moment, so you can probably get it for fucking nothing.
Is it? I mean, it wasn't very expensive anyway. I think it was under $5.
Yeah, it was. I don't know why I said. I don't even know if because I actually haven't thought about that game for ages, but I don't know why I thought it was on sale. I think a load of Sony produced things.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I might be wrong, but anyway,
but it wasn't expensive anyway. And if you have the Move, it's nice to have something to use it with,
Yeah.
Because as I've said before, the Move is such a nice piece of kit. It works so well.
Yeah. Damn, I can't believe I forgot about that. That was a highlight. I loved that game so much. I'm going to stick it on later. Okay, my number 4 is SSX.
Okay, yeah.
A game that I like to think that a lot of critics and a lot of people who played it early judged it on its campaign, and you can't do that. I mean, it was a very, very hackneyed, old school trial and error based campaign I enjoyed it enough, I guess, but that's not why it exists. Why it exists is the multiplayer, and I won't say it's revolutionary, because it's not going to cause a revolution. It's not going to be especially influential. I'd like it to be, but I don't think it will be. But it is revelatory. It's exciting in a totally new way. If I didn't write about games for a living and I didn't have to spend my time playing games so much, I'd be playing that every weekend, no doubt about it. It's just there's something so beautiful. I was going to say that seems so wrong. But the way it's so forward thinking what they've done with the multiplayer, creating this community essentially, and just moving around it. And it's the other thing is, I don't know why I think it's so innocent and so sort of. I see it as this kind of weird. Oh God, what's the word? Things that look amazing, the best utopian. I see it as like this weird utopia where everyone's friendly, and because there's no direct competition. It's all that. Well, there is now if you downloaded that patch, but there's no direct competition. It's just and it's all based on gambling as well. That's why it's so strange that I think of it in this such sort of weird manner. But regardless of all of that shit, it's a truly new multiplayer experience, and there haven't been many of those this year. And I absolutely adored it. I adored that game to the fucking core.
Yeah, I liked it a lot as well. I didn't really get a chance to go back in and enjoy the multiplayer. As we say, way too often, and probably to our detriment of deciding to do a show where we have to play 10 games every week. There's just ain't enough time to do everything. But yeah, I didn't really have anything bad to say about the game. I just wish some of the runs were longer because I'm from the SXX3 and on tour school, where I loved the 30-minute runs and the 25-minute peak runs in those games were just some of the best gaming experiences I had in the previous generation. So having everything cut back to smaller, sort of maximum 4 or 5 minute runs was a bit of a shame for me. But once I got over that, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, if I could hug any game this year, that'd be it.
You've got it.
Oh yeah, but it's not. I mean, if
I've got a nice image of you cuddling your SSX box now.
Well, no, if the entity that is SSX this year was like a cloud of stuff, I don't know.
I don't either. My number 3 is Alan Wake's American Nightmare.
Oh yeah.
And on Xbox Live.
Yes.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's got a bit of a kicking again in some places, but it kind of condensed the Alan Wake formula down into way more action orientated. Yeah, not that the main game itself wasn't action orientated, but did a really clever and very divisive thing by making you basically play the same game 3 times in a row, but the second time you do it, it's condensed, and the third time you do it, it's basically stripped down to like 2 basic things. But it was all a game, as far as I'm concerned anyway, about writer's block, and they pulled in every single mechanic, every single part of the structure to kind of reinforce that theme. And I just really liked it. I liked everything about it. It had some great moments where it used real-world music really well. Kasabian being one of them, and I can't remember the one at the end of the game now because it's been so long since I played it, but like a sort of boss fight at the end where the music kicks in. Some terrible voice acting in there, including a female scientist who is the worst voice actress of the year, surely.
Yes.
Dreadful. But even then I was thinking, is this deliberate? Is it deliberately this shit? But I don't know. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really dug it. It just came at the right time as well when it was a little bit quieter. Probably takes about 4 hours to get through, I'd say. And the satisfaction of just simply wielding a torch, popping their shields, for want of a better word, their shadows, and then bam, hitting them with a gun it's a really nice mechanic, and it doesn't feel like every other shooter out there. Doesn't use the same movement, the same stick movement, so it feels like its own game. And I'm intrigued by the continuing adventures of Alan Wake, everyone's favourite grumpy, slightly rude, obnoxious writer.
Are they going to do? Are they going to do more?
It said Alan Wake's adventures will continue at the end. So I mean, I heard it did all right, and yeah, I think they will.
Okay. I really liked that game. Actually, I think I might have thought more of it even than the original.
I think I did as well. But it needed the original to be there. If this was the first game, you'd be like, "What the fuck am I doing playing this 3 times in a row?"
Yeah, true. No, I thought I didn't realise that critics had been a bit sort of stuffy about it.
Yeah. I mean, up and down, but it definitely felt like this was a game that I liked more than a lot of people.
Okay, no, I can understand that. I think I'm in the same boat as that. No, that was very good game. That it's never been part of a price drop, has it?
Don't really. I see the writing when that stuff comes out, when the news stories come out, but none of it goes into my brain.
Okay.
It might as well be Sanskrit.
Okay, I think I'm similar to that. It's never normally that's something they'd shout about if it was going cheap, but I don't recall it ever going cheap.
It was 1,200, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, but worth every penny.
Sorry?
Worth every penny.
Yes.
Okay, my number 3 is Twisted Metal on the PlayStation 3. Yeah, I was never a Twisted Metal fan back in the day. So the new one, the PS3 one, which came out this year, was pure fan service. So all that stuff was lost on me. I just took it as it was, which was a standalone game. And on that score, I really liked it. I liked a lot of what it did, and it was kind of irritating seeing so many people take against how difficult it was. And it wasn't difficult in a traditional sense. It was difficult because each track, you race through all these different tracks and there's different sort of things that you have to adhere to. but they were essentially puzzles. So occasionally there'd be a very, very dangerous track and there'd be a certain number of points you had to pass, but then there would be a certain number of shortcuts that you could take, but it was probably not advisable. And so you had to... It was like Rock Band Blitz. You know, you have a song or you have a set of things that you have to actually sit back and think about it. It wasn't like I'm going to go and have a race. I'm going to outrace this guy. I'm going to use my weapons. You had to do a lot more thinking.
Right.
It was so much more sophisticated. And when people go, "Oh God, I just did this race 3 times on the trot and I lost," I'm like, think about it, because I was in that same boat. I got to a point where I was just like, "This is frustrating as fuck. I'm going to turn it off." And then I thought, hold on a minute. I don't have to use that shortcut. That way's longer, but I'm not going to sort of miss that checkpoint and all that stuff. It was constantly inventive and truly expensive. When you compare it to stuff like PlayStation All-Stars, which came out in November or December, they spent a lot of money on Twisted Metal, and it was... There was something very, very nice about that. The cutscenes, which were a mixture of CG and actual actors, was really evocative. And it was stupidly... It was adult for no reason. When I wrote my review, I said that it has a very PS1 attitude towards attitude, which means that it was just brazenly violent, brazenly tasteless for no reason other than, back in the day, that would have sold them a few extra copies.
Yeah.
But they still maintained that ethos, and I was just like, I have to love it, just because it's so brazenly stupid sometimes. And profane, and it has no need to be. It's a car racing game. It's basically fucking Mario Kart. But they've put all of this adult material onto it, but I found that quite charming, and it just demanded patience. And it was the first PS3 game I can recall in a long time that allowed for 4-player split screen. And when you're playing a game like that, you want 4-player split screen.
Yeah,
it was a shame to see it so shat on, because I thought it was a really, really, really good game. Really liked it a lot.
I forgot it existed, to be honest, until you just mentioned it then.
So did I, but I looked back over the year and I found it, and I remembered how much I thought of it compared to most people, because it was bastard hard, but there was a way around that if you were prepared to sit back and think about it. So,
yeah, he's gone on to just make kind of mobile and social games now, isn't he, old Mr. Jaffe?
Yes, he has. That's a shame, because that was a very... but it didn't sell anywhere near as well as they expected. So.
No. Talking of games that I'm sure didn't sell very well, Asura's Wrath is my number 2.
Oh my god, I forgot about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it was critically panned. I think most people really liked it. It got a lot of 8s. I gave it an 8 for Video Gamer. But yeah, just a fucking mad action game that almost just like QTEs for the most part. Very little proper mechanics in a traditional sense, and I thought I'd hate it. I started off hating it for the first 20 minutes. I was just like, this isn't a game, this is shit, this is just fucking crap. And then it just sunk its hooks in, and it was just like relentlessly original ideas of how they can put the fucking maddest shit you've ever seen on screen, have you interact with it. And a main character in Asura who was so unbelievably hilariously angry, with good right. He was really angry for good reasons, and almost all of the game is about building up a rage meter by either hitting QTE prompts or doing some really quite basic but reasonably enjoyable brawly combat, building it up to burst and then hitting it, and he just fucking flips out. You're lifting up people who are bigger than the solar system above your head and chucking them. You're screaming, so different arms like pop out of your body. It's just, it really appealed to my sense of humour, and it's not like a comedy, but it is funny. And every time you hit the final blow, you're just like, yeah, fucking yes. And I just recommend anyone to play Asura's Wrath, because it's just so fun and so out there.
Yeah, that's another one I completely forgot about completely. Because I loved that as well, and again, it's like something that you'd probably find by accident, on the PlayStation 2, because it's a real. I love the fact that we live in a world where that now can be released sort of to everybody and be on both consoles and have a wide an audience as possible. It's unfortunate that people aren't buying games at the moment, so not many people saw it anyway. But man, that is the most that's probably this year's cast iron bona fide cult classic game, and I implore you to play it. I can't believe I forgot about it. It made a real impression on me as well. That's a real shame.
Yeah, what excites me is I'd forgotten it existed, and then I was listening to another podcast and they mentioned it, and I was like, I've still got to finish the DLC. I've got it sitting there. I started it and then I never got around to finishing it. So I've still got like 2 chapters of it to do.
Fuck.
So yeah, I'm going to do that after, which I'm pumped for, because apparently they're even more mental than the rest of the game.
Oh, great. I'm going to have to do that as well. God. That's annoying that I forgot it, and it's annoying that I know I need to play it again, because that was, it made a real impression. My number 2 is Syndicate. We've spoken about it already.
Yes.
I thought that's, as I said, I didn't really understand why people were giving it such a kicking. The campaign set a benchmark, as I said many months ago, for narrative incoherence. It made less than no sense, and it was almost comedic how badly structured that story was. If you could even call it a story, it was a series of events that had no relation to each other. And as I said, that time when I walked into a room, got shot at, and then I got an achievement saying you walked in between 2 rival warring factions or something, and I was like, warring factions? People are at war? What does this have to do with anything that I've been doing? I was so... But anyway, aside from that, the combat was just pitch perfect. And, like you said, using those powers to disable your enemy's suits or making them turn against their pals, they're
Like cohorts.
Yeah, they're cohort. Yeah, or just initially I thought it was cool when someone throws a grenade and you see a prompt that you can sort of disable the grenade in midair. But as the game goes on, you don't disable a grenade in midair. You disable fucking 5 at once. But they were very, very clever about how they raised the pitch of the sort of the action. And I just thought, as I was playing, I was like, I don't quite know what this game has to do to make people love it, because it was impeccably well made, it was slick, and the combat was fresh. It did. I mean, the suit that you have, or was it an eyeball chip? I can't even remember that much about it.
I think it's a chip.
Yeah, I mean that was Syndicate's equivalent of the nano suit in Crisis, but that suit you use for stealth, whereas this brings just a little bit of flair and a little bit of panache to combat as it happens. Yeah, I thought it was really good. And the co-op, as I've said before, nicked most of its ideas from Battlefield, but if you think that's a bad thing, you're off your nut. And it was kind of like the Onslaught mode from Bad Company 2, if you played that, which was... It was 4-player, but you were sort of... It was kind of like... The more I think about it, the more it doesn't seem as original as I remember it, but it was kind of like a sideline campaign, but almost even Horde-like, which is strange. But it took its cues from that. It was relentlessly hard, and you could not win unless you employed teamwork. So yeah, it was the co-op was a real high point this year. I thought that was a fantastic amount of fun, and the campaign was great as well. Incredibly slick, incredibly fun. I just you are laughing if you can find that for a few quid now.
Yeah, I still have it to finish the campaign. I definitely want to do that and tick it off my list, my magical list. But you summed it up perfectly there. It's a shame that I never got to play the co-op. I'd imagine there's probably a few people pottering around there now, but I don't want to speak to them. But yeah, definitely we'll get through the campaign and all that stuff you said about catching all the grenades or whatever. That sounds cool. But
it's so well produced and so actually inventive and fresh. I mean, there's not the attitude and the sort of dismissal of that game still I don't quite understand. I honestly. Yeah, it's a strange one. So if you can find it for cheap, do not hesitate. Do not hesitate on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. My number 1, my most underrated game of 2012 is I Am Alive.
Oh, yeah.
Again, on Xbox Live Arcade. I think it's on PSN as well. I think the only person who gave it a good score was Tom at Eurogamer, who also liked it, but almost universally panned everywhere else. To the point of being ignored by a lot of places. I thought it was superb. It fell apart a little bit towards the end, but basically it was the kind of a really genuinely bleak, different survival post-apocalypse game that was doing stuff that is in next year's The Last of Us. It was doing that stuff, and it has done a lot of that stuff, like the fact that every bullet is so precious, and especially during the first half of the game where you get into these situations where people come out after you and you can pull your gun on them, and they don't know if you've got bullets or not. And eventually, you start to see through the curtains of that, and it breaks down, and it does just become a mechanic. But at first, it's really fresh and like really tense in a completely different way. You just pull their gun and they're like, okay, buddy, okay, all right, don't worry about it. And then another guy, you can see him out the corner of your eye, and he's like, well, I'm going to fucking chance it. And he'll run. So you quickly go, bam, drop him, and then the first guy's like, fuck. But then if you make the mistake of going click, because you only have one bullet, they're like, aha, right, and then they'll come for you. So really cool combat scenarios and kind of tension scenarios that just have never been in another game. That plus good tense climbing. You had like a sort of stamina meter, so you couldn't just climb forever like an Uncharted or a Prince of Persia. You had to actually sort of plan your routes a little bit and look for places to stop and whack a little, what do you call it? Like you stick them in the ice to rest. Oh, fuck knows, but one of those things. And like I said, it does fall apart a little bit towards the end, but like a good, well told story with decent economy, doesn't go out of its way to fall into exposition, doesn't feel the need to explain what the event that's caused all this stuff is. Really, really strong graphical filters which sort of work in a duality, because they cover the draw distance and stuff that comes from the fact that it isn't of as high a budget as it could be, but it also gives it a really strong feel and look and tone. And I just think it's fucking great. It's one of those games that I was amazed when I read the reviews. It's like, you don't see what they're trying to do, and like, it had a shambles in development and moved around studios, but what's that got to do with us? That's nothing to do with us. That's their business. They released this game.
That's another game that I completely forgot existed, and I intended to try. I tried the trial, and I remember thinking that there were some things in it that might end up fucking me off. I can't remember what they were, but I always intended to go back to it. But I remember thinking the look of it, I was like, wow, this is a downloadable game. Yeah, it looks fantastic, and originally so it didn't feel like much, although it did feel like the Book of Eli. They used the same filters, and
that's right, the Book of Eli,
and it was set in the same sort of world. But I again, that's another one that I forgot was out there. I will have to have. That's another one. I have to have a look at it at some point.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough because it's not a short game. It's quite a short game but it's about 5 hours long. So it's a proper game. You have to actually find the time to do it. And I will reiterate, it does fall apart a bit towards the end. And by the time we got to the end, I was like, thank fuck for that. But then, you remember like the 2/3 of the game that was so excellent, especially the first third.
God, I completely.
And there's some scenes in it, man. Like there was a lot of stuff last year about strong content, people pulling it apart and saying that shouldn't be in games, Tomb Raider stuff and stuff. Man, there's stuff in this game that nobody even knew was there because nobody played it. That is way stronger than any of that potential stuff. Way stronger. Not out of place, but just is in there.
Okay. Again, that's another one that's been on sale, and I've kind of forgot that it's there. I'd love it if we lived in a world where one game came out a month.
I know,
but then
I'd get bored.
Yeah, so would I.
And our podcast would be shit.
yeah, it really would. That's very true. I'm gonna have to make a mental note to play that. I'll make a mental note now, and I'll erase it in 5 seconds.
That's right.
Okay, my number one is The Darkness 2.
Damn, this is one of mine. On the flip side, ones I wanted to play. It's
a game that, again, it's another one that I forgot about. But when I was trying to compile this list of underrated games, I came across it. I was like, I can't believe I forgot about a game that I thought as much of as I did as The Darkness 2. And again, it's a strange case because it's a game that seemed to be very well reviewed, or at least reviewed to a very decent level, and just still ignored and sort of deemed as inessential. Whereas the more I think about it, the more over the last few days I've been like, I just remember how blown away I was by that game. And it's a game about demonic possession, about mental illness, about sleazy organised crime syndicates, and there's bits of it that are literally set in hell, but it's subtle. It's just an incredibly subtle game. What it's really about is about the lead character's relationship with his dead girlfriend and his obsession with her. And it was the way that story was told. It was never really about. I mean, the combat was incredible as well. You're supposed to be this incredibly powerful being, and you can fling stuff across. You feel like that character. The controls are so well designed that you feel like you could do anything at any moment, and you're all powerful. And it was, the game itself. Just if you wanted just a shooter, this delivers, no question of it. I mean, the first Darkness game was much more successful as an RPG, and when I was playing it, I was like, this seems like it's pandering to people who don't really play first-person shooters so much. Whereas the Darkness 2 was a first-person shooter, and there was a load of action in it, and it was slightly ridiculous. And at one point, I remember there's a bit on a ghost train. I was like, this game knows exactly what it is. The sequence on the ghost train, I was like, it is basically a ghost train through most of it. But there were genuinely surprising plot twists throughout it, and one at the end, I was like, I can't. That's so impressive that they managed to pull that off. I honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it's annoying that I've seen a couple of people or sites or magazines who've compiled what is going to be their 10 best games of the year, all their games of the year, and they're going to decide on one. The fact that it's not present on any of them is madness, because it's special, man. It's so good. I forgot how good it was.
How long is the campaign?
6, 7, 8 hours or so.
I want to play it. I think I've seen it for a tenner, and yeah, I forgot. I just completely. I do want to play it. I actually really do want to play that. This is not one of those. I'd like to, but it's not going to happen. I really do want to sesh that. Actually,
it's not. I mean, as I said earlier on, there's been some great, incredibly well written games this year. This is up there on the same level as Far Cry 3. Albeit completely different, because that was a sprawling opus that has a lot more to do. This is a focused story about a gangster who has all this shit to contend with, but what he's really obsessed with is his dead. And the darkness, once it sort of taunts you when you're possessed by it. Yeah. And all of that stuff was really effective, and the way it ends is strangely affecting, and I still remember that final ending really clearly, like it was the end of a great film, and audacious. It's actually audacious. That's why people, the fact that it was kind of dismissed, it's a sequel to some game that was interesting but not that great. And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, that really was something unique, and they really went out on a limb with it, and it's a goddamn shame that it didn't get the attention it deserved, especially come end of year. If it had been released nearer to the end of the year, I think it would have done, because it is that out there and that successful and slick. The package as a whole. There's a disposable co-op mode, which is fucking leave that to one side. Yeah. But just the level of polish and how cinematic some of it is, and the storytelling is just It was. I think it was co-written by one of the guys who created the comic book series. I might be wrong about that, but someone who's involved with the comics wrote the game. But I mean, for goodness sake, if you see that for a tenner, it's an absolute gem. A gem. Yeah, I want to do it. I do want to play that game. I'm going to make it happen. Do that, because it's special. Genius special. Sweet. So that was our top 20, or probably 18. I think there's a bit of crossover. Underrated games of 2012. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully that you will find a couple of games that you missed there, and when you've got a bit of free time, you can fill that gap with something cool that you might have missed, because it's good to do that. Anyway, thanks for listening. Hope you've had a nice holiday period and all that shit. And check the website out, thefineartplaylist.com, Twitter @John Denton, @Chet Roivas. Subscribe on iTunes. Go to YouTube. Use other internet things to find us. You won't regret it. See you later. Yeah, genuine. Happy New Year. We'll see you soon. John's getting hitched in a bit, so we might be on hiatus. I don't know. Who knows? It's a bit of a mystery. But maybe we'll see you next week. It's a magic box of strangeness. Bye.
creature of some kind or something.
Time manipulation, mind reading. Oh, he has many powers. Why, he can even raise the dead. And once spawned, they are forever loyal to Calypso. But this year, I will bring him to his
Listen, every year this time I got people calling in with his bull.
No! You must believe Calypso is the reason for all the violence. He is the devil.
I do agree with him on one thing. It's bad out there, folks. Real bad.
So I'd circle strafe around all of the enemies, get them into one place, and then start hacking away at the pillars so that the ceiling started falling down. And that was a game in itself. There was all those other things. There was this Sixth Sense thing where you could automatically trigger slow-mo whenever you were in danger and turn it into sort of something a bit more strategic. And that stuff was buried in the menus, and most people just played it as it was straight out of the box, which admittedly it's pretty fucking ropey on that score, but I really appreciated the effort they went to. You could play it in a million different ways, and it was. I liked how askew it was. It was directed by a Japanese guy. It was a UK development team that worked on it, and they were pandering to the American audience non-stop. So it was just a little bit ski-whiff. And lovably shit. I mean, like, there's things that would normally annoy me that I kind of warm to, like the fact that the lead character's name is Bryce. And the only reason that his name is Bryce is so that every time he wields his sword, he shouts "Slice 'em" and "Bryce 'em," which is just a fucking terrible joke. It's not even a joke. It's just like something rhymes with that. So that's what we're calling it. But yeah, it's not a game I'd recommend picking up at full price. You can get it for a £5, and even then, there's too much good shit out at the moment. But I want to give those guys like a little bit of kudos for what they managed to do, which was. It was decent, much more decent than people made out.
I tell you what wasn't decent, the multiplayer, which we played, which was horrendous. You
can say that about a lot of games, though.
Yeah.
But that was particularly fucking... Yeah, that was poor.
Indeed. So, indeed. My number 9 is a game I've talked about recently a few times. I'll go over it quickly. WWE 13. Not so much blasted by critics, is almost completely ignored. I don't remember seeing that many reviews for it by the major sites. The major sites obviously covered it, but no real fanfare. And as I've said before, they put a lot of effort into this attitude mode, which makes up probably like 70% of the content of the game. It really is all about it. And it's the nicest thing that they've done in one of their games for years and years and years, and the engine's the best it's ever been. And like I said, I've talked about it a bit recently on the normal podcast, but well worth getting. It's already down to under 20 quid, but that's the word I'll use for now. First-person games really well, and they do a really good job of doing the kind of physicality of first-person movement really well as well. And Syndicate's no different, and it did get a bit of a kicking in some parts, and I think it was partly... Perhaps, we talked about this ages ago, but it was partly perhaps due to the marketing was a bit funny for it. People got on the fact it had dubstep in it, which is just like, okay, that's just some music that they chose. But yeah, it's a really nice shooter. It's got some really cool ideas with the hacking, the sort of stuff that you can do to the world and like blow people's guns up in their hands and stuff. It's not a life changer by any means, but if you found yourself in a bit of a drought and you found it for £5 or something, which I wouldn't be surprised if you could. Well worth bashing through.
Yeah, I'll talk about it a bit in a minute, but
sure.
That's a game that the critical reaction really mystified me, because it seemed to be being judged on things that a lot of people got really upset that they'd made a first-person shooter out of a strategy game, and that was just like, okay, fair enough, but try and judge it on its own merits. And I was playing it, and I remember I was playing it when all the reviews were hitting. I was like, what? This is not a 5 out of 10 game, blatantly not. But I'll talk about that in a short while.
Okay.
My number 10, I completely forgot it came out this year, but NeverDead.
That was this year, was it?
It was the very beginning of this year, yeah. The Konami hack and slash, everyone assumed it wanted to be a Devil May Cry. It wasn't really. And it's a bad game. I put it in exactly the same category as I put Call of Juarez the Cartel last year, which was a bad game fundamentally, but there were so many good ideas in it that people just wanted to ignore that I kind of felt like I had to champion it a little bit. NeverDead wasn't I say it was a bad game. It was just a monotonous and repetitive game. But the things that were on the sidelines, if you investigated, basically you could tailor the game to how you fancied playing. There were so many different ways of playing it. It was ridiculous. The sub-menu of things that you could unlock. So as I think I spoke about this months ago, I just upgraded this perk so that falling environment and masonry and stuff, the walls falling down, was deadly.
Mm-hmm.
Where brevity is paramount.
Hello and welcome to the second Christmas special of Chet and Jon's Reassuringly Finite Gaming Playlist. My name is Chet Rovers. With me, as usual, is John Denton.
What's up?
Basically, we're going to do this whole show is about the 10 games that John and I think, or the 20 games in total that John and I think are the most underrated of the year just past 2012. If you're one of those people that hates lists like this, you're not alone. So do I. I'm sure John does as well.
I think the whole thing's a list.
What
every
do you mean?
week.
No, the whole idea of being under a list of underrated games.
Okay.
Because it just, all that does is invites people to sort of make assumptions about what other people are thinking. I read one the other week and it was like the most underrated games of 2012. And it was at number one was Black Ops 2. And he actually said, when are critics going to learn? And that's a game that got universally praised by almost everybody. So that's annoying because it's just a way for you to big up. We're going to do it as well. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk through the 10 games that we think are the most underrated. They might have slipped you by. They might have been ignored slightly by critics or whatever. But yeah, from 10 to 1, it's not the most time we played them. The 10s are the games we think are the least underrated. The number 1s we think are the most underrated, I guess.
As you can tell, we put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to talk about games that we think you should have played. And if you haven't played them, done. That's it. So, John, go ahead.
My number 10 is Syndicate, which I wouldn't be surprised if it appears somewhere on your list at some point.
Yeah.
Very, very slick, well-made, well-produced shooter with, by all accounts, really good co-op, which I didn't get a chance to play, but I really enjoyed what I played as a single player, which is probably about 2/3 of it. Has since been eclipsed easily by shooters later in the year, single-player shooters, Far Cry 3, etc. But probably available for about 44p now. Yeah. And well worth playing if there's a little bit of a drought at any point, although I don't think there is at the beginning of next year for once. Yeah. But Starbreeze does kind of stylish, noir's an annoying word, I noticed today, a day of recording. So you can't go wrong really if you like all that stuff. Mankind, chucked off the cell. Good old days.
But it's not considerably better. If you bought last year's and weren't happy with it, this isn't going to change your mind, is it?
Well, no, not on a purely mechanical point of view, but last year didn't have this whole nostalgia mode in there. It's kind of, the stuff in the NBA 2K games that they've done recently, where it's going back in time and reliving these amazing moments, and all the presentations done really well. It's that basically, but about this really specific, important moment in time. The time when Stone Cold was big, at The Rock and Mankind, and all these people, and when when it was good and fun, and it's a really lavish production. Lavish for one of those games, as lavish as they can get, with a bunch of poor Japanese people sleeping under their desks in sleeping bags, just wishing they could do something else with their lives. Yeah. But they can't. They have to make WWE games.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think I'm going to fork out for it, but if I see it around for uber cheap, I might have a look, because I do like those games. It's just they've never blown me away.
You don't have this nostalgia factor that a lot of people will, though.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
People like me who were into it back then.
Yeah, genuine. My number 9 is Beat the Beat Rhythm Paradise on the Nintendo Wii.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, a lot of people did. It's a game that was very, very kindly reviewed by the critics and stuff, but a lot of people just abandoned the Nintendo Wii by that point. So now that
Me
the
being
Wii,
one of them.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got a Wii U, though, that's well worth picking up. I mean, it is problematic in a sense because everything about it is quite basic. There's a lot of content, but you will just think that they could have released it as a downloadable game. And hey, maybe they might. They might sort of upscale it and release it as a Wii U download. But it's difficult because I feel reluctant to put a price on how much fun it is, how funny it is, and just it's a joy. I mean, it really is, and completely eccentric in games. The way that games are getting less and less like games like that used to be 10 a penny back in the PS2 era. Now they're not nowhere near as much. And just have a look at it on YouTube, and if it looks like it appeals, snap it up, because it really is something else. And it's a real shame that it came so late in the Wii's life cycle, because most people that I know didn't have Wii's at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to go and buy a bunch of just a few of the classics from the Wii that now I've got the Wii U hooked up to the TV. It's what I've always wanted. I know it doesn't upscale particularly well, but just having it all there on a proper TV. So Skyward Sword I saw today for under 20 quid.
Oh, what? Why didn't you buy it?
Sorry?
You should have bought it then and there.
Well, it'll just go down a bit more, I would imagine, after Christmas. So it's only going to depreciate.
Your life's... The longer you leave it, the lesser your life is. Play it as soon as possible, that's what I mean.
Yeah, well, I thought there's no point buying an Epic game now when I've got a stack in my cupboard.
I always forget about that.
To get through.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Yeah, I want to get the Rhythm Paradise as well, and a couple of others.
Genuine. Yeah, there's plenty. The Wii, I never gave up on the Wii, and it did deliver constantly.
You didn't. You always championed it.
And yeah, there's loads. I mean, if you've got a Wii U and you're looking for a cheap game, there's fuckloads to choose from on the Wii U. On the Wii, sorry.
Yeah, maybe we should do a top 10 of that one day. That'd be good.
Genuine.
You done on Rhythm Paradise?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot you can say about it. It's a rhythm action game that's incredibly quirky and amusing. But it's have a look at it on YouTube and you'll know immediately whether it tickles. It's £40. Well, it was £40 at the time, and again, I can understand why some people might have been reluctant at that price. But if you can get it for cheap now, don't hesitate.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about it.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's great.
Sweet. My number 8 is Lone Survivor on PC.
Oh, yeah.
The 2D indie survival horror game by a chap called Jasper Byrne, English chap. Like the most Silent Hill game since the old Silent Hills, really. Much more Silent Hill than the recent Silent Hills, in fact. Very creepy, very hard, very unsettling, very stylish. It's all just 2D pixel art, but he uses it really, really effectively, and it's kind of very Lynchian as well. There's a lot of like Lost Highway. I mean, Silent Hill is very Lynchian. That's where most of the influences in that series come from. But there's a lot of Lost Highway, a lot of Blue Velvet in there as well, and